Last time we were talking about the God's workers and how the vegans were going to be the next workers, and that's true on this level, on this corporeal level. Because when you make the Creator sign, you have the horizontal and the vertical, and you have the encompassing circle, and that which is without beginning and without end. And the God's workers were basically laboring in the outer realm, in that horizontal, in the corporeal realm. But he also has workers on the inner foundation realm. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is those workers that are going to be coming and helping mankind to move forward. And man himself is going to be contributory to this. He's going to labor also in this. And it actually does have to do with what we talked about last time, which is the egregores, which are, well, I mentioned that maybe a Western word for it would be sort of like mindset. But an egregore is more than that in well, regardless of how other people use it or have used it, I'm going to be using it. We're going to be using it in a sense in a more comprehensive sense. And we have what we have is we have the we have the light of the soul inside of us, and we can build on that light of the soul, and that's working in the soul realm. Now, in the soul, but if we're not attuned to the soul, and we build partly in light and partly not, then this it's built in this thicker substance that's not quite physical substance, but this actually forms the basis of the egregores. And what an egregore, in this sense, an egregore is we might say a habitual perception of something, a habitual reaction to something, a habitual way of proceeding that is not purely of light. Because if it was purely of light, it would be in the soul and of soul light. But if it isn't, then it aggregates to itself. We mentioned last time that corpor has, of itself is inert. It has no power to do anything. And it has no motion of its own. And where it gets its motion is from vortexia. And the stored vortexia gives it motion. The vortices pushing against each other and pushing this way and that way. But all this vortexia does is push. It never pulls. It always pushes. And for convenience sake, we say we have a positive and a negative, but really what we have is a positive field and then a less positive field. And where there's a less density, that which is denser will go to that which is less density. As far as like the flow of electricity, for example, goes. And we also could say path of least resistance type of a thing. And so that's what gives corpor motion, and by and large. But now that's the nay and the positive aspect of it, the going forth aspect of it, but there's a receptive aspect of it. That's an opposite of that, which is the receptive. And that's the Om, that's the receptivity, that's the soul, that's the unseen within us, which draws to itself. So you have in the womb, for example, in the woman's womb, where the seed comes together and forms a zygote and all that, the embryo and so forth. And how that happens, how that grows, is it starts with the light of the soul, and it draws to it. It draws substance into it. And so that wishes, and so because it's receptive, then vortexia, you can have vortexia move toward it, just depending upon how dense that draw is. It's like the amount of power, so to speak, or of the density of the power, the type of thing that's being pulled in. And so in that regard, then, you have now a child inherits from their parents, and they inherit the physical body, but they don't really inherit the physical body. What they inherit is their egregores. And their egregores, you can think of an egregore sort of as a matrix, in a sense, and it sets up channels of flow and ways that things are going to flow. And so the substance that's drawn to the zygote, to the embryo, and especially the embryo and the fetus, that which is drawn to it goes through this egregore. It goes through these channels that we inherit from our forebears. And so that's why our forebears, they have passed on in spirit. They rise in spirit. But what they passed on through the corpor, which was and is the egregores, which they pass through the corpor spirit. And so their offspring, that's still the bequeathal of their forebears. And so they want to sort of feel like they passed this on, created these circumstances. Now, now egregores always has darkness. You see, when it's farther away from the soul, it gets denser and darker, and it starts losing its light and so forth. And you go all the way out, as we mentioned last time, from the soul, from the Rouge light, all the way out and through substance to corporeal substance, where it's totally black, totally negative, totally nothing, so to speak. Anyway, so what a person then inherits, they build on this, and that's their corporeal body. Well, they're given a spirit, an individual spirit that's from the great spark of a light from the great spirit, that soul light, and it's given to them, and it's and that is totally individual. It's a unique person, but it gets influenced by the egregore, by the covering that it has, the corporeal covering, but also through the spiritual milieu that your ancestors were, because we have a connection with them. We have and this is part of what's going to be talked about here, and this connection that we have is like a communion of spirit with them. There's a closeness there. Now, by and large, they've gone away from the earth, our ancestors, forebears, and they're rising up in heaven. So they're not down here on earth. Normally, we're not aware of their spirit, because they're not here in the distance and all that. And things that are proximate to each other, close to each other, affect each other more than things that are, at a great distance. Well, so now man in the very beginning, now Isu, he didn't have any egregores. Man had to be taught to build the egregore, to build his self. Anything of self will build in these egregores, will build in these mindsets, will build in these perceptions and conceptions of reality and beliefs and sentiments about the way things are and why they are that way. And so initially, Asu, he didn't have that. He was just like that, sort of like he was like the beast, only he was an animal. I mean, the pure animal man, and like the other beasts of the field, they just do what they do because they're inspired to do it. Now they have some mental capacity, so they can see that while if I go this way or that way, this way will be better than that way. But it's not a tremendous amount of intelligence, but they have some intelligence there. And the same with Asu. Asu had, to some extent, but mostly Asu was essentially a blank slate, and he was as a tree, as it says in Oahspe. We learn about in Oahspe. His spirit was diffuse through a tree. He didn't have this core center of light. It was just diffuse through him, and he just did things. But when man came along, when the spirit came, the man capable of eternal life, with the Ihans, when the Satantis came with the angels who hadn't experienced corporeal life in other worlds and all that, and they came in and mated with Asu and created offspring, who then became capable of eternal life, but they also became capable of creating these egregores, of deviating from that light, which then creates, in the unseen, it creates these pathways and matrices and even forms, and we can say thought forms and all. But the thought form. But you see, this is all in the soul region. But the mind generally supports the egregores. They generally support whatever you have there, because your ego feels attached to it, your heart and your spirit. And so you'll go, well, I'm gonna do it this way, and they think they're doing the right thing and all that by staying with their egregore. And so how then does man come away from, how does he migrate from one egregore to another? How is this possible? And what happens is that during a Dan-Hay cycle, you have the false gods arise and all that, and they basically take over the egregore, and they say, I'm the head of this, and so they tend to keep people in that. But Jehovah created the soul of man to continually grow, and so at some point they can't hold that egregore. It starts falling apart. Now the fourth generation of anything, or the fourth pulse of anything, tries to hold that together, because their thing is the cosmos. The holding, the integrating of the whole into a harmonious whole, ideally. And so they'll do the beast thing. Now the beast pecking order, that's to keep harmony. And that's part of the cosmos of the beast, is that's how they keep harmony. But you keep the pecking order, you keep things in order, and you don't let things escape out beyond that border of their. We could say they have the different beasts have a built-in, but it's not an egregore, but it's their built-in pathways of light that they have that they can move in. And they don't move outside of that, but man can move outside of his pathways that are open to move toward and then more and more into light. So, but now all the way up until the time of Spintarmais, to the cycle of Spita, well, actually it goes back to Fragapati, was the preparatory stage for it, and Osiris before that, which then was the sixth era of man. Osiris the first and true began that, and set the tone for it. And that lasted all the way through Laika cycle, or Bon, which is where we are now, into Cosman, at the end of Bon and the beginning of Cosman. And what Osiris taught was the corporeal and the outer foundation, and getting that secure and being smart about it, intelligent about it. And so during the Osiris cycle, man essentially denied Jehovah altogether, and eventually, and said, no, there is no Jehovah. It's all man, and man can do everything, and we can live this perfect corporeal life and all that. And he was allowed to do that because that was the extreme that he had to learn, that there is more to it than that. And Zarathustra came along and said, yes, there is more, and here it is. And spirit can be stronger, is stronger than corpor. And so they had the sun ceremony and all that. I mean, ultimately, where you're proving that the spirit is stronger than corpor, and you get spears, lance, run through you, and cuts and burns and all that, and then you get healed. And of course, it's the angels that are with them that help them to heal and to rise beyond that at that time, because they needed to know and learn, and they needed to believe that the spirit was stronger than corpor. And they did, and they understand, they believed it, and they understood it, and they knew it. And the Magi came out of it, and the Magi knew it as well. And so mankind, that was the lesson. So man here was being prepared. He was being prepared for Spita. And so, what happened with Spita was something very beautiful, just fantastically marvelous. I mean, and so what I want to do is I want to read a chapter from Olaspi here in parts, and I'll stop from time to time, because I want to talk about it, because it has effect today, and I'll explain why. Because Spita happened 5800 BK, before Cosmin, 5800, and the average for the Danhe cycle is 3,000 years, and so something that's set at the beginning of a Danhe will endure 3,000 years and possibly longer. Well, actually, it does last longer, and I'll explain how. Something that happened in Spita. Well, what happened in Spita? What happened in Spita was that man, instead of just receiving the spirit, was now capable of giving forth spirit, giving forth light. In the past, you couldn't do that. He had to follow the egregores, more or less, except for he was shown, you can rise up through that, and you can transcend it. But now he's going to learn, now he's ready to impart the light so that others can rise up out of their egregores and come to the light of Jehovah, to the soul light. And so this was this was the start of it. Spita was the very beginning of that. And so I'm going to read you here, if you want to follow along, you can. It's chapter 12 of Spinta Armage, but I'm going to just read, and then I'll stop occasionally and talk about it. So Spinta Armage says, who can understand your models, O Jehovah? Who cannot understand your models, O Jehovah? You have shown to mortals the food of the flesh and the source of the substance of the blood. Well, this is a reference to the type of food, that the mortal eats, and so he knows that what he eats, it builds his blood, and the vegetable foods keep the blood pure and clean and cool and good for the spirit, in keeping a peaceful and content, as seen by the models of herbivore animals. But if they make a food of animals and other flesh, it keeps the blood unclean, impure, and hot, making the spirit contentious, impatient, predatory, etc., as seen by the models of carnivore animals. Of course, they also have compassion, can have compassion, and show a passionate love, so to speak, that type of thing. Okay, so anyway, you have created your corporeal members as a symbol before them of your Essene worlds, and your Essene world and your Essene peoples to receive and to impart to receive and to impart. Your Essene people. But this is not all. You created poison to show man that whatever does not receive, does not impart, and does not impart is death. That whatsoever does not receive and does not impart is death. And so, in poison, when you get poison, the reason that it's poisoned is because we can't integrate it. We can't receive it and go, oh yeah, okay, I'll accommodate you, and then you accommodate it, and then you're okay. And it refuses to get accommodated. Well, it doesn't refuse to get accommodated. You just lack the capacity to accommodate it, and it creates death. But anyway, but the point of that, so what this means is that man is now ready to both impart and receive in the Spirit. And he's going to have the opportunity to do this in Spita, starting with Spita, as we'll find out here shortly. And most wisely, she said, O Father, and this is Spita Armage speaking, most wisely, O Father, you have provided the degrees of subsistence to all your creations, to the corporean corporeal food, to the atmospherian atmospheric food, to the etherian etheric food. Wide I will spread my tables, O Jehovah. Your gods and goddesses and your high-raised chieftains shall sit at the feast of Spita. So she's giving a feast. Now this is a feast they're going to be celebrating the fact that man has essentially arrived at adulthood to where he's able to take responsibility and give forth. As you're a child, you're growing up, you can't really be expected, to go out and give forth, and then you receive and you give forth and receive. But now man is going to do that. But as a child, you basically receive encouragement, nourishment, and subsistence, and all that from your parents. So anyway, so now there's going to be this big feast, and they're going to get subsistence from it. They're going to get nourishment from this. And the nourishment depends upon the amount of light, of soul light that's in it. And it has to do with the egregores, so to speak, themselves. Now, I don't want to speak of egregores as being all bad, because it's not. It's because without a step-by-step up to the light, we can't get to the light. We need to have graded, this grades of degrees of plateaus away from the earth. We have all these models of, you can't start someone in calculus right away. You have to, they have to go through different arithmetic and then algebra and all that stuff, and all that before and so forth. So it's the same type of thing with the construction of these sort of mindsets, or these egregores, these thought patterns, and so what they're going to feast on in a part, it's a celebration of this, but they're going to feast. There's going to be a feast starting with Spita Armage, and this feast is going to come because man is ready to give forth, and the first fruits of his giving forth. Spita Armage gets that, but then she sets up all this arc of Spita and everything like that, and she'll get it from essentially when Hog, who was the seventh son of Brahma and Utiv, in whom was the leaven of the Osirian doctrine, where you don't believe in spirit. Him believing and opening up that gateway, that just like that egregore just fell away, and he opened up the way then for everybody else to follow. They can all go through that gateway now, and that first giving forth that he gave, it was all right there. And anyway, that was a part of that was the density part, the real dense part of that food. But as we'll see, Spita Armage also got an Etherian part, a very high ethiolite part of her food. So it's like when you're eating food, the nourishment, in a sense, you're eating different types of egregores, if you want to think of them, but they're not egregores in the sense that they're composed in light. They're composed by the Oetons up in Etheria, which is way up there in grade, and they set the course and the structure for it. And so you have these different types of textures and tastes, different foods that man can have, the different nuts and fruits and vegetables, all those different tastes. And so, and you have different densities. You have the lightness of an apple or a pear, and compared to like the density of a rutabaga or something. I mean, it's a big difference. So, anyway, so we'll go on here. The chieftain has sent 500,000 swift messengers into the regions of Etherian worlds, near the roadway of the great serpent. Down to the atmospherian regions, she sent 10,000 messengers to the gods and lords, her laborers. And this was during the dawn of Spita. To her invited guests, she privileged each to bring 1 million attendants. Next, Spinta Armais sent a message to 50,000 arrow ship makers in the regions of Sventa Agma, in the Etherian Itis, to prepare ceremonial salvers and connecting rods. Ceremonial salvers and connecting rods. Ceremonial salvers and connecting rods, so that all the billions, being united, could hear the voice of Jehovah from her mobile throne in her Aravagna. 12 counterparts to these she sent down to the lowest heavenly regions, so the all-light could pierce the corporeal earth. Now, this particular statement is of very much interest to us. Why did she want ceremonial salvers, and why did she want connecting rods? Well, we know why she wanted connecting rods. But what are connecting rods? Well, now you think we have corporeal representations of that. We have cables, and so you can transmit messages through cables. We're doing this now as we speak across the internet, and then it becomes wireless. Yes, wireless, but it still goes along in a channel. The waves and all that, and so these channels allow for communication, but you cannot have a polluted channel. You have to have a channel that's suitable to the communication. Okay, and so this was what they were preparing. They were preparing something that would allow the message to come through, but now this. But it's not just the message, because it's all interconnected. It's not just the message that, and what speak to Armais, when the Father will speak through her and all that. It's not just that, but it's getting that message to everyone out through these. And what I'm trying to get at here is that when I speak now, I'm speaking in a particular language, the American English language, and so people who are attuned to that can understand it. But there are those who don't speak that language, but they can get a sense from the feel of the vibrations, from the vibes, what it, the tone of the voice and all that, and expressions and the soul substance of it. So they get a sense of possibility, depending upon how pure and clean they are, of what's going on. And so the salvers, the ceremonial salvers. Well, now a salver is a serving tray. A ceremonial salver is a special serving tray that you use during ceremony. And what you use during ceremony, you talk about here, holy ceremony here of some sort. It has to be in a condition that enhances and elevates what's going on. And so it has to be appropriate for the situation, we might say. And salver, the use of the word salver is very interesting, because salve, S-A-L-V-E, is like an emollient, a lotion that you can put on to soothe a sore. And essentially what it does is it creates a condition, a transition between one condition and another condition. It kind of creates an interface, if you will, between. So the ceremonial salver acts as like an interface toward that which is going on. It connects them with it. So the food that they're going to get from that is connected to what's going on with this ark of Spita and what is being accomplished through Spita Armaj. And so we'll come back to this later with the salvers, but I just wanted to mention it at that point. And now, when her well-skilled workmen of tens of thousands of years' experience had saluted and gone off to their respective labors, the chieftainess spoke before the council, saying, "Because of my ark upon the earth and her heavens, the light of our Father will forever remain with mortals and in the Hayden fields." Now, so what she's saying is that at the etheric foundation level of the earth and in the Heda, the atmosphere in heavens, that the Father's light is going to be there at all times. It will not be obliterated, cannot be obliterated. Before this, man could not, it wouldn't be sustained. It wouldn't have been possible to sustain it. Now it is. And so she's going to, shall we say, seal it there so that man has access to that. "But behold," she said, "even as a young man coming to maturity goes away on his own account, in great hope and self-conceit of his powers, to meet many misfortunes and great darkness, so will it be with the earth and her heavens after Spita. Because I plant my ark in these heavens, and say to its gods, you are free, behold, there shall arise numerous false gods of great power. And as a young man going forth is puffed up with conceit, so will the atmospherian gods believe they know all things, and so bring great darkness and misery upon their kingdoms and upon themselves." Now, this is some important parts here that I want to talk about, is the young man going away on his own account and great hope and self-conceit of his powers. He feels he has those because now he's going to be connected with this light that's in heaven. And so he doesn't understand that it's the light from the Creator necessarily. It's light and it's me. I'm connected. I can feel it. I can understand. I can do this and I can do that, and I'm perceiving this and doing that. So there's this great conceit and all that. And this was mostly this was in the atmospherian, where the false gods risen and all that. It would take until the next cycle of the Leica cycle, the Bond cycle, when that went down and manifested on Earth. So amongst mortals, more so than in Spita. And so what this means is that it happens in atmospheria first, and then it eventually makes its way to corporea. Mortals absorb, then kind of grasp what's going, because mortals are denser, they're in corporea. And it takes them a while to figure out, because they're used to reacting to corporeal things, not maybe so much to things, to things of light, and to the Ark of Spita and all that. But they're able to not only tap into that light, but they're able to impart that light. Remember what she said at the very beginning. is dead unless you can both impart and receive. So now man's going to start imparting this light of Spita. Only he's not going to do it necessarily according to Jehovah, but he's going to be setting up a lot of egregores, a lot of, oh, this is the way it is, this is the way it is, this is the way it is, and then you'll have sentiment holders who hold that sentiment, and people will get drawn to that, and it'll grow and become these big, huge things. They're almost like giant ships, ocean liners. And so if you get in one of these egregores, now these nation states that we're in, the Republic Social Order, the capitalist system and order, those are all egregores. You can get caught in those and you try to move it from one side to the other. It's like swimming out alone. Okay, I'm going to change where this ocean liner is going. You swim out in front of the ocean liner and try to push that gazillion ton thing this way or that way. You know, what effect are you going to have? Even you can have all your mates there with you trying to move. It's not going to move. And so you go to the back and say, okay, well, I'll just try to be a rudder. Well, that's not going to have any effect either. You can't tip it. You can't do anything. It's going to keep going. And eventually, everything starts falling apart on that. Now, the fourth pulse, the fourth generation of everything, tries to hold it together. And they become control freaks, and they're of the beast. And so that's one of the beastly aspect of the fourth generation, who are now in charge of this world. And almost totally in charge of this world. Now, that third generation in Klausman, right? They've only got like 5 months left. And in 2016, February 18, boom. There's going to be 100% fourth generation in charge. And they're going to be in charge, and then they're going to start losing some power to the fifth generation who's coming in. And ultimately, and then in 2032, in October 19th, 2032, bam, that's the cross quarter point of the second quadrant on the C-spill wheel. It's the cross quarter here, and at that point, then right after that point, there's going to be a change, because the fifth generation, the balance of power is going to tip to the fifth generation, and they're going to become in power. And the fifth generation is very important because they're important for the God's workers, these ones that I'm going to be talking about. And so anyway, this is, I don't want to get too far astray from where we are, but man is going to, in Spita, the man had great conceit up with Anahasaj, the Lord God and Zeus and all that, and then we come into Leica cycle, and man, the corporeal man, became like that. And the false gods, they just sort of rode on top of those egregores and outmaneuvered. They say because they were on top, because they could outmaneuver everybody else there. But they weren't. But they were a lot smarter, a lot wiser than the mortals, and so they could manipulate them, and give them a certain amount of light and a certain amount of direction and all this. Well, anyway, but we'll talk more about that later. So returning to this, okay, so the atmospherian gods believe they know all things, and so bring great darkness and misery upon their kingdoms and upon themselves. But the light of my ark shall stand, shall grow like a small seed planted, and in time to come both angels and mortals shall understand there is only one all light, a very center to whom all gods are only as diadems, like small diadems, small jewels. As a young man of the earth must have experience of his own to realize his own shortness, so must even the gods of these lower heavens be left to run with a loose rein for the glory of Jehovah. and for themselves in final deliverance. Now think of that in terms of mortals, and think of that in terms of mortals even to this time. And the reason is, even though we're almost 200 years in the Cosmon, is it was 5,800 years ago when Spita came. And remember, 3,000 years for a Danhe, for a cycle, and then 3,000 more years. So you had 3,000 years for the cycle in Atmospheria and 3,000 years for the cycle in mortals following Spita. 200 years for mortals makes it 2049. June, the solstice, 2049. That's when that, and so what's going to happen, what's being predicted here is going to come to mortals finally, eventually, as we approach 2049. It's not going to just come out of nowhere. Of course, we have to labor for it and all that, but this, so for which reason, starting now, she's talking about the false gods there, but now remember, this is going to apply to mortals here during the Bond cycle and these first 200 years of Cosmon. For which reason, starting now, the bondage, well, no, wait a minute, I don't know if, I think I read this, as a young man of the earth must have experience of his own to realize his own shortness, so must even the gods of these lower heavens be left to run with a loose rein for the glory of Jehovah and for themselves in final deliverance. For which reason, starting now, the bondage of the discipline of a god and his lords shall be as nothing. In other words, the discipline of God and his lords shall not be forced from that time forward in Atmospheria. That's where it started. Now, from this day forward, they shall use fire and water as a method of enforcement only for casting out hells and knots. They shall hold dominion in their respective places only by persuasion and the example of practice. So we're coming up to a fulfillment of that. We're coming up to that having run its course. This man going out to these extremes and butting his head here and there and setting up all these egregores and all that. But how do you get man from these egregores? How do you get him to Jehovah's light? How do you help man to realize that all one source? And so this is the labor of God's workers that are well going to be coming after in 2016, February 18th. And thereafter, we're going to have angels that are going to be coming, and I'll talk about that later. And because the angels are coming and going to be doing this labor, then mortals themselves will start to take on that and do that labor. Because as above, so below, they get inspired with that, and that what man sees, he tries to imitate and all that stuff. So, as in the early days, a king rules with a rod and with tyrannous laws, as in a riper age, the king and armies give way to a power vested in the people, which is what the republic order is, we can remember. So shall my ark be the giving of the lower heavens and the earth beneath unto the keeping of themselves. So this is all very important, because what happened with the Ark of Bond, what was the big message there? And this is what they said right at the very beginning of that. Migration from bondage. That was the big thing of the Bond cycle. Migration from bondage. From the egregores to the soul light. Okay, to the tree of light within us. And this is what Moses and Capella and Chine established among mortals. Sealed it in the earth, just like this got, just like the Ark of Spita got sealed in the earth through Spinta Armage, this got sealed in the earth, and then it started spreading. And then what happened? Way at the very end, almost at the very end of Bonn, migration from bondage. This was the Republic social order setting up away from the kings. Migration from bondage up to the king. That was their migration. It was a setting up of that. And so there was like the fulfillment of that. It finally reached it all the way from those who were the pure faithists in Jehovah, with the faithist discipline and all that, to those who were high in grade, but didn't understand a lot of things about. In other words, they were almost like the Holgians of the bond cycle, except for they believed in spirit, or understood that there was, spiritual things here and all that. And you have to you have to accommodate for that, and you have to, and all that. So this migration from bondage, well, now but you see, we haven't quite got all there yet, because what does it say? That only by persuasion and the example and the practice of example of practice of holiness and living in the soul light, living in essentially the way that Jehovah created us to live in the light. And so we're coming up to that. We're coming up to the time when putting away of enforcement is going away. And it ought to be here by the end of that second quadrant. In other words, by this last spell, from 2016 to 2049, 2049 being then the 6,000 years since the Ark of Spita. It went from atmosphere to mortals. So, and because, it took mortals, the regular mortals, to get all the way to the end of Bonn to do this, and so to do that migration and all that. So you can see that man is kind of slow moving a lot of, the tail end of mankind and all that, to move them everyone forward and all that. But that's what we're moving toward. And the workers of God that are coming, they are going to help this to happen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit.
And they also had migration in bondage, didn't they? Because they sent the criminals over as bonded servants. And they had, and then they took the black people as slaves. So there was the opposite of that happening as well.
Right, that's a good point.
Migration.
Yeah, the old flip of it, huh? Yeah, it's this is Spinta Armage continues. I go now on my journey down to the earth in my area of Agna to receive and deliver my four gods, Os, Vishnu, Yama, and Elea, God in chief. Thus saying, Spinta Armage descended to the foot of Jehovah's throne, and the light fell upon Thale, and he rose up from the throne and descended, taking her hand, saying, Arise, O goddess, and hear the voice of your Father, Creator and Ruler. Behold, your labor on the earth and her heavens is near the end, and because of your steadfastness I am honored in you, my daughter. While you are delivering my gods, behold, I will be with you, and whatever you desire of me, I will give to you. My sons and daughters shall receive the visiting hosts from the high heavens, and allot them places in the feast. And my sons and daughters shall receive and adorn my brides and bridegrooms. My trumpeters shall proclaim me and my works, from the surface of the earth to the farthest places of Saltwaka. So from the surface of the earth to the farthest places in the realms of Spinta Armage. Yes, my light makers shall plant the staff of my holy fire in the throne of Kurioshavi, and the foot of the staff shall pierce the earth in the land of Vindhu, to receive and deliver my earth son Brahma. Go, O chieftainess, Holy One, of great wisdom and power, it is the voice of your Father. Now this light coming down is going to come down where Brahma and Utah. And remember, Brahma was grade 99. 99, the highest grade possible. And in grade of service. And so it's appropriate that the light that's coming down here went into the highest grade. And so this was very significant that it, it would come down there and the, Sminta Armai stood aside and then said, "To you, my beloved companions, Oaks, Sibogon, Ha'oha, when the staff of the Father's light has descended to the earth, come quickly to me, then, in my arrowship of fire, for it shall be a signal between us at the hour, that in that hour I will raise up my gods from the corporeal earth. And I will open the earth and bring forth the bodies of my son Brahma and his wife Utiv, whose youngest son holds the leaven of the Osirian law. And I will have the hosts of my 10 lords assembled there, and I will deliver into their hands for their successors the fulfillment of the divine laws." The fulfillment of the divine laws. So that means then that the fulfillment of the divine laws happened during the time of Spinta Armish. And what was the divine laws? The divine laws, remember, from Pragapati cycle was for that mortals to perceive that they're ruled by heaven. That there's a kingdom up there, a kingdom of God, and then there's, of course, also false gods and all that too, a possibility of that. But there's a kingdom of God, Son of Jehovah, and all that. So this is what they want mortals to learn. This is about what the divine laws are about. And this Spinta Armitage cycle was the fulfillment of that. Which meant when Laika came, remember Laika came, he said, "I'm setting up things all brand new. I don't have anything in common with the past." So the divinity, the divine law, the divinity was not there anymore. It was a new system and order that came in with Laika. But there's more. We'll talk about that possibly some other time. But this is, so her companions responded, "In Jehovah's wisdom and power, we will be there." Now, she's going to talk here a lot about wisdom and power. Now, recall then that in the making of the Creator symbol, his name sign encompasses all these things. But recall that this is love, this is wisdom, and this is power. And so you have love, wisdom, power, or you can have wisdom, love, power, which is another way of making the Creator sign. But when you're going with wisdom and power, because wisdom and power had come to the forefront at this time. Other times in the past, Dan Hayes, it's not always wisdom and power. Sometimes it's love, wisdom, power. Sometimes it's wisdom, love, power. Sometimes it's power, and just basically the power is the main thing, or whatever it may happen to be. But in this particular case, it's wisdom and power. Now, you might recognize that as the Ieo in Samoin, in the Tablet of Samoin. It's the inner foundation, the laying of the inner foundation. And this is the fifth generation, mind you, the fifth pulse of anything has this Ieu. And remember, the fifth generation are coming into power in 2032, but they're going to start to come into power at 2016. Now, the fourth generation, control freaks though many of them may be, because they're trying to hold everything all together and, and stop it from falling apart, and the cracks, the old ship is creaky and leaking and all that, and so they're doing all that. Well, but aside from that, there are higher aspects of the fourth pulse, which indeed is to hold the best and integrate the best of all the previous, okay, in order to provide the foundation, the outer foundation for this to happen, for this to occur. And And this is the thing I wanted to mention about the egregores, as long as we're touching on this subject, is that during the measure of Cephas, which was 72,000 years, from Sathantes all the way up through Bon, that was the time of Cephas. In the forming the egregores, man would go forth and build these things. So you're building a house, you put wood together and you hammer this and hammer that and do this and do that, and you're putting stuff together, making stuff. Okay, it's all activity. It's nay, 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 going forth type of thing. But whereas we talked about, I believe we talked about this last time, that in the third focus, or in the third pulse, the wisest one is you allow, with the wisdom, you allow the foundation to manifest forth, to come forth. And so that's, you provide for that foundation. That's a different type of a labor. You're still getting the foundation, but it's different. It's not the nay going forth type. It's the receptive. And you can remember, we're in the Cosmin era. Cosmin is the daughter of Jehovah. Being the daughter of Jehovah, she's the feminine, the receptivity, more of that. And it's the time of S, the building of S in man. And that's also, S is also receptive and feminine in, well, I'm just saying feminine not because it's a woman or anything like that per se, but because a woman exemplifies the receptivity, and the male exemplifies the nay, the going forth. But we have both of those within us at all times. So anyway, so this foundation that's coming forth, that the fifth generation, especially, but others as well, everybody living participates in this to some extent. But this inner foundation, it's going to be the importance of the outer foundation is not particularly relevant. It's still going to be there and everything like that, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the egregores. You can't come to somebody's egregore and start ripping it apart. Because they ain't not going to like that. Who's ever holding that egregore? The sentiment holders, no, they ain't going to let you do that. And that's what, people don't like other people coming in and messing with their egregores. Leave my egregore alone. I like my egregore. I like my Christ, or I like my Buddha. I like my, whomever it may be. Or whatever it may be. I like my money getting, or I like this, or I like that. And so they're going to hold on to it. So the approach is not to rip away that foundation and replace it with another foundation. The approach is to allow the outer foundation to manifest, because the focus is not on the focus, is on how do you get to those who are stuck in that egregore, because they get entwined with it. They get caught up. They're riding on that ship. They don't know any way out or anything like that. So, and the solution is that it's through the light of the soul. You have to get into the light of the soul. And from the light of the soul, then you can start to build properly. Now, you get into the light of the soul, the Ark of Spita is still there, but there's more than just the Ark of Spita. Oh yeah, since Cosmin Day, July 21st, 2001, the light came down. The light of the tree of Cosmin, and went around the earth, and the Drujas were removed. The evil ones were removed. And since that time, until 2016, man is on his own. The angels stepped back a pace. And why did they step back a pace? They stepped back a pace because the only ones running the egregores right now is man himself. You can't blame the Drujas. You can't blame the false evil spirits. You can't blame some Satan out there somewhere, because there ain't none there. It's man himself carrying on in that momentum, true, But part of this is realizing, or for him to take responsibility, okay, and he has a choice during this time, that period when that tree was planted up here until 2016. Who are they going to choose? Who are they going to choose? Jehovah, the light of Jehovah, or the light of self, Satan, who builds the egregores? And so people have made that choice. But now, since Cosmin is about lifting the entire human race, it's not sufficient just, for a small group of people to go aside and live according to the light of Jehovah, and that it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Not in this cosmic time. So it's helping. So how you help these people is the same way. You don't go in and start bang, 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 and build this and build that. No, you don't. You go into the core, and you live that core. You live that light, so that people who are in these egregores look over there and they see a ship that they can jump to, and they don't have to stay in their old egregore. And they'll go, yeah, what am I doing here? I could be over there in this beautiful place. And this beautiful place, though, is built on the inner foundation. It's not built on that outer foundation. It's built on this inner foundation. So now we come to God's workers. And who are God's workers? All right, we mentioned the vegans. They're very important for the outer realm, because it also opens the way for this inner realm, but on the outer plane. But this inner one. So how do you? Okay, so in dealing with someone's, all right, they have to perceive you. First of all, they can't perceive you as a threat. Because if you come across in any way that threatens their egregore, boom, you're shut out. Bang, that's it. So you're not there to convert. Now, that was set up, all this conversion stuff back in Spita. You had to persuade. And they sent out the missions and the Mishnah, and so people had missions, right? And they would go out and they would persuade, and we're coming to the end of that. As a matter of fact, we've been almost 200 years in the Cosmin. We will be at 2049. And in Cosmin, it's living it. It's living that example. And so, if we're going to help those, we do it by, we're not here to convert you. Okay? We're here to help you. We're here to help. But how do you help? You see, you help in ways of light, in ways that build in light, rather than in ways that build in darkness, that somehow work with the egregores, because you don't want to do that. You want to go into ways that allow the soul can express in light. And so this will, okay, so, but in order to perceive that, to be convinced of this, you see, people need to know this. They need to feel it and all that. And this is where the workers come into effect. Because remember, we talked earlier about the ceremonial salvers and the connecting rods. And how important they were, so you could hear the voice. Well, the same with connecting with other people. Salver comes from salve. It has that same root of salve in it. That salve, that amelioration, that soothing, that assuaging of the situation, so that the people who are caught up in the defense of their egregores can relax a bit and feel not fearful about relaxing. Just and not be fearful. Oh, if I relax, bam, someone's gonna come in there and do this or do that. Because, but that's what the salvers will do. The salvers make it possible, and these are the workers of God, the salvers, because they're applying this balm, this salve, this transition, this interface between the light of Jehovah and these egregores, and the light of the egregores. In the midst, the core of all these egregores is a grain of truth. They're all based on, you look at the four false religions, the four religions of the beast, okay, they all have goodness in their core. They're all built on core of truth. This is why it says in Oahspe comes to those who have fulfilled the old, who have fulfilled these cores of truth that are in each of these false religions. Those who have fulfilled these and want to grow in more light, don't want to get caught up into this egregore thing, these strictures and structures that constrict and constrain. And now this first is going to come through the angels. The angels are going to be coming. They're going to be returning, and from their step back a pace. And man is going to, they're going to be acting as salvers to allow, salvers and connecting rods in a sense, because they're going to create the conditions where you can get in connection with the soul light. You can help other people get in connection with the soul light simply by being good, by doing good, by being what it says in Oahspe, a person of goodwill and concern for others and all this, all the good things, all the virtues that we know about. Greed is not a virtue. And speaking of which, back when this started, this spell, from 1982 to 2016, that was, remember the 80s and that, the greed is good. All right, well now man is looking out and seeing, okay, this is the fruit of greed is good. Is it good? Seems like a lot of people are in misery to me. So that mantra, that was a mantra of the egregores. Now you take, well, anyway, I won't go any further into that, but except for you're going to see a lot of people will be still holding on tightly to their egregores. They're not all going to, release their grip on it. And some of them are just fearful. That's the only thing that they know and all that, and so they're not going to. But the salvors provide that sort of a connecting rod or a tube, if you will, of purity, of pure light, of pure, a way of motion for that person that they're talking to or connecting with, for them to experience the soul light, the Ruach, if you will, the light of the tree of Cosmon, the tree of light, I should say, through the tree of life, which is what we represent. So it's a giving forth of that light, but it's not a going in and going pound, and doing this and doing that, doing that construction thing. It's more like a flower unfolding, blossoming, blooming out. And who does a flower blooming? Who does that push against? But it's accomplishing. It's still expanding. It's still growing, but it's not forcing its way. See, it's a welcome thing. The fragrances, its aroma is fantastic. People welcome. I love it. So the angels at first will be doing this, be coming and returning and helping man to perceive this. And then mortals, those who are of Jehovah's workers, those who have been raised up for this, and it'll spread around and everything, but they're going to be going forth and being salvers themselves. And so that's the other part of God's workers. These are the inner core workers, the inner foundation workers, not the outer foundation per se. Not like I said, not that the outer foundation goes away. It's still going to be there, but it's the Father's kingdom. It's the time and season for that, for this inner foundation to come forth and be acknowledged. And it according to the cycles, then that 6,000 years, when we come to 2049, since the heavens started by the heavens of God, started by putting away enforcement, so we're going to see here on Corpor that putting away of enforcement among mortals in great numbers. The doing away of the non-need for enforcement. Okay, what this means, and that's signals the start of fraternity. And the start of fraternity is the it's the vibes, man. Because this is what they had right in the 60s. It's the vibes. They didn't know how to sustain it, but they knew it was the vibes. And it is the vibes. The fraternity level is the vibes. It's about the vibes. And they helping each other. And they still want to have a good society, but they help each other and all that, and all that because they want good vibes. And the only way you can do that is to have others. So who's going to come rise to the top of that is going to be the Bogans. The Taugans, the law, with the horns, Taugans, they're the Republic Social, or the law. The law is important. And before then, the monarchists and all that, and the Bogan, the lion, the personal rule and all that, the monarchy. And then we have the rule of laws with the Taurus and the bull, laying out of bulls, and it's the law. Now we're coming, then, the rise of the Bogans, the sheep, those who rule by persuasion, those who rule through gentleness. Now they're still of the beast, mind you. They're still beasts, but because they're like the ram or the sheep, the Aries. But they're doing it for the vibes, so they're still going to have egregores. They're not getting rid of the egregores, but they're going to be more refined type of egregores. And that's appropriate for that level, that grade group level. Remember, in the great book, Tablet of Grade and Ingrade, which is in the WASPI Standard Edition, that came with the original WASPI, you can see that those three grades lie below grade 50. So that's the beastly one. So you have the Bogans and the Taugans and the Bogans. So there's going to be a lot of Bogans around. And that's going to be coming up. So anyway, so that was the essentially, it seems like it was most of what I received and to share with you folks.
I find that very interesting too. It's the workers, the foundation, the inner and the outer foundation. I find that you can see it. I can see it. I see it with the people who are promoting veganism.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who promote sustainability and off the grid and all that, and they're all trying to get a better world.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to improve on what we have. But I see that without veganism, you can't have sustainability.
Right.
Because, they go off grid, but they take their animals with them.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, we've already seen that. You have
just somebody who's just
people went out and did the communities back in the time of when Newborough in the 1880s, that time 1882 to that spell.
Yeah, 82.
Well, the Newborough wasn't the only one. That was the whole time. That was the utopians. They were in California. Well, most of them were in California. Mm-hmm. There was some in the west, but there weren't that many in the east. But before that, you had the like I said, the Amish and the the Protestants who set up their own community away from the English.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still going. I mean, they have virtues that and their grade can be, the higher of the Zion, but they don't, they can't get beyond that. They can't rise up because they're at that level because they haven't gone vegan. So the vegan part of the sustainability is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they get that, they'll be able to perceive that higherness, because the people who are vegan, some people say, oh yeah, we should cut off all their heads who are doing that to the animals, or let's not get involved with anything else but the veganism. You can be whoever or whatever you want, but be a vegan and stop hurting the animals, or be be healthy and be vegan to be healthy. But you see, to be healthy, there's so many people coming out, different ideas. The paleo, well, you just eat mostly fruit and vegetables and eat a bit of meat and eat that. So it's, the vegans have actually basically said no animals, no animal product.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's healthy or not, no, just, you can be healthy, but that's not what we're about, freeing the animals. And there's another freedom from bondage for you, because there's freedom for the animals as well. Anyway, so this coming inner foundation is interesting because, there's going to be, because it's going to open up, because people, stop doing those things that are pulling them down so much, they're going to be able to open up. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking about the Renaissance, because the angels came and they were thinking. They said, well, go down and think for man. Mm-hmm. So they would actually help them to envision and imagine these things that it was all dark before. And so the angels were there, putting those thoughts there for them. And so here we got the angels. They're not going to be thinking for man, are they? I mean, I can't see how they're going to be thinking for man. They're going to, but it will still be like a renaissance, but maybe not, but not as we knew it in that time. Not as a renaissance of the lost knowledge in that sense, but the renaissance of of people being able to listen to their conscience, to be able to hear the Creator and say, well, this is the way. If we do it this way, everyone survives. Because we're all global now, like the whole world has to survive. So that's why we're closer to listening to the voice of the Creator, because that's for all. Because the Creator is for all. So, what's good for all? Well, meat eaters, they don't know yet. They look and they say, well, it's not good for me. I want to eat my meat, and I don't feel so happy. I feel depressed if I don't eat my. But actually, it is good for all to be vegan. It's good for the planet. Apart from the person themselves, they don't realise it yet. But it's good for, the animals. It's good for the society. It's good for the planet, for sustainability. It's actually good
for the person themselves, because it starts clearing out their poisons.
Yeah, but they don't like that at first because they're withdrawal,
Yeah, well, it's the poisons coursing through their blood to get rid of it.
Yeah, so they start, and a lot of them start, and then they give up. But they have, maybe they'll go back to it. There's no doubt they will go back to it as it gets easier. But they feel it, and they think, oh, this is not, they don't understand the cleansing and the withdrawal that they have to go through.